Welcome to Everything CPA and Private Equity, where we unpack the evolving relationship between accounting firms, private equity, and other strategics. I'm David Wolfscale, a partner at Whitman Transition Advisors.
And I'm Phil Whitman, CEO of Whitman Transition Advisors. And we've chatted with more than 150 private equity groups. We've actually closed over 40 transactions with those private equity groups. And we're bringing you firsthand insights from the front lines.
And whether you're exploring your first deal, putting your toe in the water, refining your strategy, we're here to guide you with real stories, expert advice, actionable takeaways. Let's dive in. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Everything CPA and Private Equity. So excited. We have a guest, my first PE deal that we ever did. I was involved with Crete PA. We're here to give leadership insights and ideas about what's going on in this quickly evolving marketplace. And I'm so thankful that we're able to have people like Josh Funk, who's Chief Development Officer for Crete PA. Great story, great insights, and a track record of success in our marketplace. So Phil, why don't you do a quick intro of Josh, and then let's get rolling.
Yeah, so this is very exciting for me because I met Josh, it was probably February of 2023. And the reason it's exciting to me is because it was the first time that I had an opportunity to meet with a fellow CPA that was getting involved in what's going on in the private equity market. And I'm going to let Josh share his background. But the one thing that I will say is I truly believe that his presence as Chief Development Officer at Crete PA gave Crete an upper hand, because whenever I would get him in the room with a prospective seller, he spoke the same language as they do. And I really think it was a tremendous competitive advantage. Now, I don't think that means every PE group should go out and find a CPA because they're CPAs like Josh Funk. I mean, it's not just the three letters that come after the name. As you'll see, he's got a wonderful personality, very charismatic. And again, he speaks our language. And we love working with Josh and his partners and fellow colleagues at Crete PA. So Josh, why don't you start at the very beginning? Because I think, we might be able to say that you're the very reason Crete PA and their backers, ZBS partners, got involved in this accounting firm business. So take it away.
Yeah, well, appreciate the warm introduction and all the great things. And we'd like to thank Whitman Transition Advisors, because in February of 2023, we had an idea and a vision, but we needed people to believe that we actually would be able to accomplish something and feel good about giving us introductions. And you guys were the first group that really did that. So, Whitman Transition, helped make this possible as well. So as Phil said, I was a practicing CPA in the St. Paul, Minneapolis area for 25 years. And, for the first 15 years of that career, it was a pretty traditional audit, tax, standard mix. But then I got introduced to a group that was acquiring a QSR platform. And the next 10 years of my career evolved into what became 95% M&A transaction where I was working with about 25 different PE groups. And at some point, these groups, they would have a transaction liquidating events, and they would grow a big firm. Our firm, we grew it up to $7.5 million revenue. We had 35 employees, but all of a sudden we were losing clients to bigger firms. In late 2021, we thought about, what if we went with one of those other larger firms, and we would not have to refer all this work away. We would double, triple our office pretty much overnight just by having national resources. And we did go down that route. And at the end of the day, in late 2021, you can correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but nobody, this is the very infancy of the most recent APS, alternative practice structure transaction, where it started in late 21, and nobody cared about an $8 million firm, $7 million firm. And we realized there was a significant hole in the marketplace and an opportunity given the industry in general. Like, it's a state of flux in the accounting industry, a state of disruption today where our workload got messed with by the government. Our talent has never been shorter. People are working more than ever. Technology is coming, but we really don't know how to implement it and what is and isn't real. And then if you looked at the demographics of the ownership base in the industry, and the industry, that group of people needed help. And I had a client, ZBS Partners, that had built 3 platforms in other industries where they were able to give owners in those industries help in ways that they didn't even know they needed help. And I went and met with the ownership group of ZBS Partners, Frank Zhang and Jake Sloan. And I'm like, we're on the wrong side of the table here. There is an opportunity. There is a window in time. Accountants need help. We can help them, and we can build something special. And ultimately, they were interested in what I was talking about, and I gave my 1-year notice for my CPA firm, like I was supposed to, help transition my book of business, and started with ZBS Partners in January of 23 and got introduced to you guys, shortly thereafter. So it was like the culmination. I had a 10-year training of what the people that were involved in platforms are looking for, how to structure deals, how to be creative, and then seeing the opportunity in this accounting world that was quickly changing right before our eyes, and seeing there was a need, and we thought we could fill it.
And at that same time, Josh, David and I had been chatting because we did a tuck into Eisner Amper, a $6 million New York City firm, and that was our first exposure to private equity. And David and I got together and we said, you know what? This can't only be for the largest of CPA firms. Ultimately, it's got to come down. And I started meeting with a bunch of PE groups that weren't even considering the accounting arena. So when you reached out to me, it was, the beginning of the validation of that process that, number one, there was interest in someone coming in, investing in a firm that wasn't, a top 100 firm, potentially, a top 200 or a top 300 firm. And that's when you came to us in February of 23. But now let's fast forward.
Why don't we talk about
I know that we've done probably 11 or 12 transactions with you guys, and we've got a bunch more on the horizon. Why don't you talk about the present day? You went to Frank and Josh, and obviously, Jake and you're Josh, and now you're in this space, and in a really, really big way. You guys are like top 100 firm, maybe top 25, top 30.
Yeah. Well, so where it's evolved to at this point is really just the tip of the iceberg. But you introduced us to the first LOI that we signed early April 2023. We closed on that transaction effective August 1st, 2023. And that's 23 months ago. Since then, we partnered with 21 firms. We operate, I think it's 13 separate brands because some have been tucked in, but we have a partnership model where we leave the brands stay and they operate as separate businesses. Consolidated today, that's probably around 300 million of revenue. At the end of 2024, you're right, the AICPA had us listed as the 36th largest firm in the country at about 240 million of revenue. And we do have a dozen deals under LOI today that's going to bring us well over the $400 million revenue mark as a consolidated total. And along with that, we've now built a Crete PA back team where we have infrastructure that is designed to do nothing except serve our partners' needs, to give them enterprise grade solutions for any question or problem they may have when it comes up. And that team today is 60 people. And if, things go how we think, it's probably going to be 100 people by the end of the year because there's so much that we can help firms accomplish that they just don't have time. They or myself, if I look back 2 years ago, I was busy serving clients, managing a book of business. And unfortunately, too often running your own business ends up being running second fiddle to serving your clients. And that's what we're trying to help people with is figuring out how to, leverage their opportunities in the most efficient ways.
And we firmly believe that, the biggest client of any firm is the firm itself. But we've really never seen people focus on the firm versus the clients, right? When there's a choice, people are client focused and they'll put them in front. So, you talked about partnership model and you provide these resources and, you're at 60 people, you'll be at 100 by the end of the year. Why don't you share some of those resources that you provide your partner firms with to allow them to have that additional time to run?
It starts off with people, right? We have resources and we break them into two categories. One would be ASAP, things we need to work on, and one would be ASAR, as soon as ready. And there's things that you have to do in a partnership on day one. We have to make sure employee benefits, payroll, handbooks, all of IT, safety, infrastructure, your technology, these are all areas of administrative support. We end up taking over your finance and your bill paying function and your banking, take that off of your plate. And then we have separate legal and compliance division. We have a wonderful lead counsel and head of compliance that, monitors, things that are happening in the compliance world with quality control documents and everything you need to do there. We have a business development team led by myself, where if you are somebody that wants to go after and tuck in some people underneath you, books of businesses or firms, we can make that happen. Basically, we're trying to put together a team that can help solve all the problems you have in running your firm on a day-to-day basis.
That's great. And just by way of example, if you can, Josh, that very first firm that you invested in August of 2023, if I recall, at that point, they were 20 million in revenue. With all the help that you provided now, 22, 23 months later, where are they today?
Their consolidated revenue today is about 45 million. And that's a combination of both organic growth and inorganic growth. We've tucked in four smaller entities into them. And then all of those have organic growth on top of that. Definitely given them the ability to scale, where we did a handful of different things with their IT. It wasn't a focus of various things with the cloud, with CCH Access, with some AI audit software. There's various things. So we've increased capacity. We took the KPIs and the management of the employees. We took the bill paying and the record keeping off of the partners' plates. There's that's come with other things that they might have to sit in an extra meeting about something else a little bit. But ultimately, we've been able to take them from a $20 million firm to a $45 million firm. And they have a platform built where I have no doubt that 3 years from now, that number is going to be 100 million of like a centralized firm.
And so going so fast in 5 years, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah. And it's about change management, and it's about building processes and systems so that, you can open an office 20, 30, 40 miles away, and you can share staff, and you have a, efficient way to move client data around and efficiently use your staff and manage resources. And nothing happens overnight in accounting, but there's a playbook, and we're here to create it and make it possible.
Hey, David, I have a question, and I might be putting the cart before the horse, but I want to make sure we get it in, because there is a differentiator in the model, in the way that you invest in firms. And, obviously to our listeners out there, there's something called rollover equity. You guys aren't buying 100% of the firm. You're typically buying 60, 70%, maybe more. But you frequently talk about your rollover equity being at the local level. If you could explain the difference, if I had a firm and I came to you and my 30% rollover was at the local level versus in other organizations where it's at the top where everyone else is, why, in your opinion, is it better for me to have my rollover at the local level?
Well, I'll explain the structure, and then I'll let you decide whether it's better, because it's going to depend on the target, right? If I had a whiteboard behind me, this might help a little. But so you have firm ABC today. It's a $10 million firm. There's 5 partners, and that's who the ownership is. What our average transaction has been about 65%. So you have this $10 million firm with 5 partners. We would come in, and the first transaction, what we call bite one at the apples, we would partner with you, and we would acquire 65% of your firm's partnership interest. Now, there are some hoops to jump through if you have attestation, work with the alternative practice structure, but ultimately, there's a mechanism today that's pretty tried and true where we, as a non-CPA, not myself, but Crete PA as a non-licensed CPA, can own 65% of your firm. What that is that's a new partner on your cap table. Your ownership group that used to own 100% of firm ABC now owns 35% of firm ABC. And Crete PA owns 65% of firm ABC. So now, if we fast forward and we 5x, the first firm from 20 to 100 million, and nobody has retired, the partners all stayed in place. Now, you, the partners of ABC, you still own 35% of that firm. That's 5 times larger than you, and you own 35%. You effectively own 35% of the EBITDA that you helped grow. And that's how we kind of think about it. And if you compare that, so it's a very much, you are the dictators of your own destiny because nothing is getting commingled with your results. There's a lot of other people in the traditional PE world, the firm, what I'd call holdco, the equivalent to Crete PA would buy 100% of firm ABC, but maybe they only pay you out for 90% of the ownership, and they take your 10%, and whatever the value of that is, they roll into their holding company. And maybe you're 10% in your firm, if they own 10 firms and they have their own equity, maybe you own 1% of the entire holding company. The holding company owns 10 firms and you own 0.1% of yourself. So at that point, in the more traditional private equity model, you're betting on the masses. Your rollover value is contingent upon how the other 9, you're directly compensated and benefit from or lose from how those other 9 firms do. In our model, you own your firm. And in our model, Phil's going to still stay the managing partner of that firm and run the day-to-day operations. And if your firm 5Xs, your rollover is going to 5X. So you asked, who is that good for and how do I benefit from that? If you believe you are a firm that can outperform the 5% annual growth rate in the accounting industry that has been around for the past 10, 20, 30 years, if you're somebody who can outperform your peers, why would you want your financial results commingled with all of those peers that you're outperforming? So for the firms that truly believe that they have the ability and the opportunity at this moment in time in the accounting world to outperform the industry, you have upside through us that is not contingent on the performance of other firms. And so it's the eye of the beholder of what's better. But we believe that the faster growing firms want control of their own destiny, and we give them an opportunity for that.
I think you also, Josh, while I would continue owning 35% of my firm, unlike most private equity groups, if let's just say, to make the math easy, there's $1 million of EBITDA at the end of the year. I own 35% of that firm. I would have, in addition to whatever partner comp is, 35% of that $1 million or $350,000 to distribute to my partners. Is that correct?
Yeah, we with our model, we're able to give what we call unit level distributions. So at the end of the year, whatever the cash flow was, it's not straight exact EBITDA, maybe working capital changed a little bit, whatever. But in your example, before, when we do a deal, we agree on what is a fair salary for Phil Whitman and Dave Wolfscale. And, that is your base compensation. And pretty much everybody does that. But what happens in our models, the cash flow of firm ABC, if it's $1 million and you own 35%, on top of the salaries that the partners got, they're going to participate in the distributions at the local level as well. And they're going to have the opportunity to take that $350,000 on top of their salaries. Bite one of the apples, like this initial transaction. Bite two is the ongoing sharing of the profits. The holdco, what they do with that cash flow is they're going to put it up to their holdco, and then you're at their whim on what they want to invest it in, and hope that they make good decisions. So again, you're trusting a different little chain of events, but we like to keep that control and let you decide what you want to invest in and reinvest in at the local level.
And one of the things that we believe in is that difference, right? So you're right. Who is it good for? It's in the eye of the beholder, but Crete is clearly different than many of the other players.
That's right. That's right.
Some people might say that, because of the way that you're doing it, hey, it's wonderful. You can continue as the managing partner, keep your culture, so you sort of have some autonomy and independence. You just have another partner that's at the cap table that's there to help you. But now you said bite one is the money that they get up front. Bite two is that they get the distributions of this compensation. Let's move on to bite three, when it's time for there to be a liquidity event. There are some people out there that would say, who's going to pay for $100 million of EBITDA that's not a one firm, 25 or 30 platforms that are all independent of one another? How do I get comfort around someone being interested in transacting with this desegregated model, as opposed to like a one firm where they say, hey, we have 100 million of EBITDA?
Well, a couple of things there is, I think that the next investor wants to see things like why this industry, why Crete PA, what's your track record, what's your growth runway, and how's your management team. That's what an investor base and the next buyer is going to be looking for. Nowhere in there did I say that we own one company or 10 companies, right? That, they're buying a consistency and a predictability of a cash flow that they think is going to grow. So at the end of the day, is this business one where we have built sustainable growth and they can feel comfortable that it's not going to fall apart? And the second thing that I would lean on is track record. So ZBS Partners has used this partnership model in 3 different platforms. And in each one of those platforms, there has been a liquidating event. And those liquidating events have been at industry leading multiples. Like the veterinary space, the home services space, the commercial construction building maintenance space. There have been multiple buyers willing to pay premium prices and multiples because the platforms themselves have had outsized industry-leading organic growth, year-over-year organic growth. And why do you have organic growth? Because you have entrepreneurial people that are still materially invested at the local level. And if you have industry-leading organic growth, you're going to end up with an industry-leading multiple. It's just been proven over time, and it's happened to ZBS platforms before, and there's no reason to believe that it's not going to happen again.
And that was something, Josh, you talked earlier, that we believed in you, and we believed in you on a personal basis and having a CPA, but we also believed in that track record of success and being able to do it in multiple industries and bringing value. And that was something that made us attractive to you, made you attractive to us. Sorry about that.
Right.
So Josh, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, when we met you in the accounting space, we had 0 employees at Crete PA. We didn't have a name. Our first LOI was to be determined who the buyer was, right? But, we've came a long way in those 2 years.
Yeah, and we believe because we saw it before. So we ask one more question, then we'll wrap up a little bit, but tell us what your view of the future is. Right? Go ahead 3 to 5 years or 10 or 100 years, whatever you want, but tell us your snapshot of what you think the future will bring.
I think the future is going to bring a more desirable profession with a better work product. We as accountants, and throw myself under the bus, we pound our chests on how hard we work and how many hours we pump in during a tax season. And, dang near, shoot ourselves in the foot trying to get things out the door. And, people today are just trying to find accountants that'll answer the phone and give them the time and attention that they deserve. And we're building an organization where we think we can do better. We think that we can be a tech-enabled platform where we can help give our employees a better experience. We think we can help give our clients a better experience. And ultimately, if we can figure out how to efficiently use resources from technology and offshoring, we can just make the profession better. And we're managing the business. We're going to do a better job with change management than accounting firms have historically done. And it should benefit all of the stakeholders in the accounting industry.
And we believe in that firmly. The Wall Street Journal came out with the article talking about the risk of quality and from medical practices. And we have been seeing a better experience, not cutting corners to try and add a couple dollars.
That analogy is just not the model in accounting. The model in accounting is creating capacity and investing more in learning, development, people, and resources, because it's a supply demand game, right? We have more demand than we have supply for. So we're not cutting corners. We want to invest in our people to create more opportunities. It's a different path to forward in this industry versus other industries that PE has been involved in, because we have the demand. We need to create the supply, and it's a different dynamic than those comparisons.
You mentioned invest in people. I do believe you're also investing in technology, which also will enable people to do, what's the highest and best value use of time. Why don't you just real quickly talk about the investments that you have made in technology? Because everyone talks about AI and, the robots are coming.
Yeah. And over the course of the past 25 years, I went from filling out C Corp returns by hand to software that I can just hit Control R and it's recalculates my circular reference in 10 seconds, right? So technology has been evolving forever. But we looked in the mirror after we had partnered with our first couple of firms, and we're like, this is changing faster than we can comprehend. And we decided that we needed help on the technology front. And we decided to strategically seek out Thrive Capital, who is one of the largest investors in OpenAI and a pretty sexy brand that has the opportunity to hire people that generally wouldn't work for an accounting firm. And we explained and met with them and talked about our thesis and thought about where we could take that. And they got excited about it. And now Thrive has actively invested in Crete PA and has a development team that goes and travels to our firms that evaluates what are things that we think we could implement to streamline work products. But then, as important as, we don't need to recreate the wheel if somebody else has already created the wheel. And they also have the ability and capacity to evaluate the 100 things that people would like to sell our platform that say we're the latest and greatest and filling in auto reading and inputting your K1s. There's 100 different technologies that people want to sell the accounting industry. And we have the ability to have somebody who actually knows stuff about technology help us choose products that are backed by the right people, that are sustainable, that are going to be around, and that do what they say they're going to do. And then we also have the ability to do what we'd call crawl, walk, run, where we do have multiple firms and we can find the one that needs that product the most. They're just desperate to have it. And we can try it out with them. We can implement it. First implementation never goes perfect. And there's a lot of things to learn as you implement this stuff. And then we can look back, create a case study, and then we can tell our other firms about it. And we don't force the firms to change. But if we can document, this is the process, this is what happens, these are the results, are you interested? And if they are, we'll have a team that'll help them implement technology. So hopefully there's the ability to utilize technology in a very systematic, organized way that manages change management, reduces the stress of changing, but hopefully isn't like jumping off a boat and just hoping for the best either. Choosing the right technology is important, because if your opponents have it, the people you're competing with, and all of a sudden you spend 3 years implementing the wrong stuff and it doesn't work, you're now at a significant disadvantage. And that's, something we want to avoid for our partners.
Awesome. So Josh, as we wrap this up, is there any points we missed, anything you want to add about the Crete PA story?
Just that we saw that there was a missing hole in the accounting world and that people needed help. And there was an opportunity to, it sounds a little holistic, but, there's an opportunity to change the way accountants work and to change the profession a little bit, because, it's been pretty static, same as last year for a long time. And all of a sudden, that's not going to work moving forward. So we think there's a huge opportunity for change and for improvement.
Well, so on behalf of myself and Phil, Josh, we love Crete and appreciate your time and effort. And it's been great being part of the journey and observing the journey. If you have any questions, feel free to give us a comment or send us a note. Like us, follow us, that type of stuff helps as well. And go crush your day. Lots of opportunities. Go find the right thing for you and your firm. So thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks for having me, guys. Always a pleasure.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks, David.
And we're done. It's amazing how, I guess he thought done was out, but so I thought that was good.
I don't know. Everything I hear from him, if I were.
Thank you for tuning into Everything CPA and Private Equity. Every episode brings fresh insight. However, there's always more to talk about. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe wherever you watch podcasts. Have a question or topic you'd like us to cover? We'd love for you to reach out to us. Together, we will help you navigate this dynamic landscape so that we can help you achieve your goals. Until next time, keep making moves that matter. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.